Welcome. I am so glad you're here today. We are jumping right into something absolutely fascinating. Have you ever wondered how a highly practical everyday software engineering problem could actually act as a bridge to, of all things, medieval philosophy, theoretical physics, and advanced mathematics? Well, in this explainer, we're going to unpack exactly that. We're looking at the architecture of Thisness. We'll explore how static code and dynamic runtime environments interact, and how a unique database structure actually models the mechanics of time itself. It is going to be a wild ride, so let's get right into it. Here's our roadmap for this explainer. 1. The code versus runtime divide. 2. Universality and Haecceity. 3. The seed tree DB engine. 4. Twilio SMS triggers. 5. The calculus of creation. And finally, number 6, our computational horizon. Starting with Section 1, the code versus runtime divide, a classic developer headache. This quote right here perfectly frames our core challenge. Back in a June 19, 2020 email, legal engineering polymath Kyle Smith wrote, "I'll try to show how the code and runtime tree reflect each other, so a developer can easily jump back and forth between the two types of expressions." Now, what he's highlighting is a totally fundamental mechanical divide. On one side, you have a static file of code just sitting on a hard drive. It's lifeless, right? On the other side, you have what actually happens when that program runs live in memory. And navigating the gap between those two states, yeah, it's incredibly difficult, mostly because they exist in entirely different contexts. Let's move to Section 2, Universality and Haecceity, the eternal and the ephemeral. So here's the wild part. This modern coding headache, it's actually a problem that's hundreds of years old. Medieval philosophers tackled this exact concept using two terms, universality and Haecceity. Think of universality as an eternal architectural blueprint. In computing terms, that's your static, pre-runtime JavaScript tile. It has all the instructions, sure, but it's frozen in time. Haecceity, on the other hand, literally means thisness. It is the ephemeral, unique runtime instance. It's basically the difference between looking at the paper blueprint of a building and actually walking through the halls of that building at a very specific, fleeting moment in time. To really solve the developer problem we just talked about, you have to find a way to synthesize these two states. This synthesis is brilliantly captured by a philosophical concept. In principio erat verbum, et verbum erat calculus. In the beginning was the word, and the word was calculus. The idea here is that a JavaScript runtime environment actually acts as a mechanical reconciler. Just by operating over a duration of time, the JavaScript environment mechanistically forces those eternal, static instructions, the universality, to wake up and come alive as a completely unique, temporary instance, the Haecceity. It literally breathes life into the static blueprint. Which brings us to Section 3, Seed Tree DB, the dynamic engine. Okay, so how do we actually build this? This is where U.S. Patent 12,664,142 comes into play. It details an architecture called Seed Tree DB. And this is not your traditional database. In Seed Tree DB, nodes contain both function and data properties side by side, acting as active script files. It's an entirely event-driven architecture. So what does that actually mean for us? It means that when a new event happens, an active script node can dynamically spawn a brand new child node just to house that incoming data. The tree literally grows as events arrive. You're looking at a database that continuously rewrites its own structure, seamlessly blending those eternal blueprint functions with ephemeral real-time data. It's a real game changer. Moving on to Section 4, Twilio SMS triggers, or as I like to call it, activating Thisness. Let's actually step through this carefully to see how an everyday action creates a literal philosophical event. Imagine, Step 1, an external SMS text message arrives via service like Twilio. Step 2, inside our C-tree-DB, an event handler vertex, which represents our eternal blueprint code, receives this new piece of data. Then, Step 3, the kernel dynamically spawns a brand new timestamped child node specifically for that exact text message. Do you see what just happened there? The system dynamically wrote its own temporary thisness. It took a totally static rule and generated a completely unique ephemeral runtime instance tied to one specific moment in time. All right, Section 5, the calculus of creation, which is the math behind the engine. So to make all of this work, we have to rely on a system called base scale calculus, which gives us this absolutely vital identity. Log base d of d equals n++. Now, let me break that down because it sounds a bit heavy. In continuous probability, things can divide infinitely, a state described in the source material as gunk, where you literally never reach a bottom. It just goes on and on. This equation, though, it acts as a geometric cork. It forces that continuous, non-halting probability into discrete, countable, finite steps. It's essentially a simple for loop. That n++ you see represents the exact bit-perfect click of a brand new state being generated. When you visualize this process through logarithmic scaling, it's actually beautiful how it captures infinite probability. Instead of fading into some abstract, infinitely small origin point that goes on forever, the geometry hits a hard physical boundary. It hits that cork we just talked about. The mathematical scaling translates infinite, undifferentiated gunk into bit-perfect, discrete geometric steps. Every individual step, every tile in this structure is a unique integer address. It becomes a physical surface representing a unique instance of thisness. And that brings us to Section 6, the computational horizon and the limits of architecture. To put this all into a universal perspective, physicist Stephen Wolfram discusses how the universe operates at a fundamental level. He says that structure is being continuously rewritten too, and that progressive rewriting is the progress of time. I mean, wow, that perfectly mirrors what we just learned about our database. SeedTreeDB's discrete logging mechanism, where each Twilio SMS triggers a new time-stamped node based on that exact log ID equals n++ click, is essentially modeling computational irreducibility. Those discrete step-by-step rewrites aren't just simple database updates. Mechanically, they are reflecting the fundamental progression of time itself. Which brings us to our final, lingering thought for this explainer. If time, state, and probability can be perfectly corked into discrete, bit-perfect geometric steps, moving us away from continuous infinite gunk and into finite, structurally sound thisness, what are the true limits of infinite context architectures? Are we actually looking at the structural blueprint for perfectly stable, infinitely scalable AI? It's a massive, massive implication to ponder. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really hope this sparked your curiosity as much as it did mine. Keep learning, and I will catch you next time.